Hi, and welcome to the 10 square meter workshop. Last time I finished the wheels for my cannon. Check it out if you didn't see it. And now move on to what ties them together, the axle. Sounds simple, but there's actually quite a bit of complexity involved. So let's get started. I'll be starting with this piece of 12mm scrap steel bar. First job, as always, is to face off. Cut to length, it's a matter of turning a bearing surface at each end. These are tapered. The taper is 7.5 to 6mm over 48mm, which I make around 1.8 degrees. That's pretty fine, so I might have to take one or two practice cuts, there's plenty of meat left, to find that. It was pretty close on the second pass, and as near as I need it on the third. Not bad going. A few more passes and it's down to the required dimensions. I shall flip it round and do the other end now. With both ends done, I can now mill the centre to 80mm square. The positioning of the first cut is of course arbitrary. I've just got to take 2mm off. Here we go. Having milled the bottom and established which way is up, I'm now going to put the small amount of axle droop in. The stub axle had a couple of degrees angle to it. It's not exactly towing, I'm not sure what it's called, but I shall do it by percussive methods. In other words, I'll hit it with a hammer. This is a sort of trial and error method. That looks pretty good. I measured it on a surface plate to make sure it was even. This was quite successful and saved a lot of complex offset turning. I can do the sides now. The fourth or top cut is slightly different from the rest. There are two ears which sit between the frames to space the axle. Having done the overall machining, we now get to the interesting bit, putting the slots in for the retaining keys for the wheels. First job is to find the centre and end using an edge finder. I'm going to form the slot by drilling a hole first, then use a milling tool to open it out, or rather lengthen it. So the first step is a centre drill. Then a 2mm drill. There's now a 2 by 3mm slot in the end of the shaft. Just got to repeat for the other end. A bit of time with abrasives to clean out the tool marks, and I have an axle ready for bluing. But first I have a few other parts I have to make. I'm going to make the washers for the wheels out of my 0.5mm steel sheet. There's a variety of styles for these accessories. I'm going to use an example from the Fort Nelson collection as my guide. First, the inner washers, or whatever they're called. Yes, I know I could turn these, but I quite like a bit of hand machining, and I can't do it with the outer ones anyway. I used a nibbler to get them close to size, and then used an 8mm washer. It's about the right size to act as a guide. Held between two washers and the vise to protect the surface, it's just a matter of filing them round. It only takes a few minutes to produce something that is probably more accurate than the original. The outer washer has a hook on the bottom. This is quite difficult to manufacture by hand, so I secure it to a piece of wood so I can clamp it in the mill. This is going to be entirely freehand, using a 3mm mill, but first I need to put a pilot hole in, because I don't have a 3mm slot cutter. The centre drill will go through both 0.5mm pieces. I shall peck along the intended profile, then run it back to smooth off the sides. After a bit of manoeuvring, I have the hook formed. With the hooked washers made, I shall turn to the keys, which I'll make out of the 6mm square bar. Mounted end up in the mill, I shall first of all face off the end, which will also establish the Z height. With that done, I shall take the pass across the back, which will remove the coating and establish the Y-axis. I repeated this for the right side, so now have the X-axis established. All I have to do now is machine it to shape. There's now a block on top, 4mm by 4mm by 1.5. That forms the tab above the key. Time to change the orientation. In the second position, I only need to know the thickness, so I'm going to take a light pass off and then measure it with a micrometer. 595, so 295 to take off. It's now 3mm thick on this part. That's the depth of the key. With the workpiece turned through 90 degrees, I needed to establish both the Z and the X-axis for this one. A millimetre was then taken off this side. Now I need to do the other side. Same setup required for this side. Of course, if I'd had the sense to set up a stop block, I could have saved having to find the X-axis again. Oh well. And at this point, the machining is finished. A 0.75mm hole I then put in the end for a retaining pin. Here's the resultant piece on my thumbnail. And here it is in place, doing its job. As usual, all I have to do now is make another one. That's all the axle parts made now. Just need to fit the blue filter to my camera. And that's the parts ready for trial assembly. And that's the wheel assembly complete. So, another step in building my Napoleonic cannon finished. Time to move on to the next stage. You won't want to miss it, so why not subscribe? See you next time.